But I think the bigger challenge in America is the amount of processed foods that we eat. Mm-hmm. And by and large, the way that foods are processed and preserved is through sodium. And so if you go down the frozen food section or anything in kind of like the middle of the grocery store, right, there's so much sodium added to all of these foods that without us knowing it, our sodium intake has ballooned. And that can lead to challenges, especially when it's not mineral sea salt. It's processed table salt is what's in all of that processed food.
Mamas, I can help you improve your family's health with my 5-week online course, Real Food, Real Families. It even has 5 weeks worth of meal plans. So check out nourishthelittles.com and use the code NTL10 for 10% off. Welcome to Modern Ancestral Mamas. We are Corey and Christine, 2 millennial moms on a mission to bring ancestral wisdom to modern motherhood. Welcome back, guys. It's no secret that I'm kind of a salt freak / collector. People know that if they want to give me a gift, they can give me salt.
Which is weird, Christine.
I know. Yeah, totally. I love receiving salt as gifts from all sorts of different places all over the world. But when I went to my first Weston A. Price conference back in 2017, that's when I discovered Baja Gold. I stopped at the table and, talked to you guys and tried it out. And that is also when I learned more about the importance of minerals and high quality salt. And I was pretty much obsessed. So in today's episode, we wanted to bring on Michael, who works for Baja Gold Salt, and we wanted to talk all about salt, the importance of salt, the importance of pure salt, and why we need it in our diet. So welcome, Michael.
Thank you so much. I'm so excited to be here.
So we were joking before we started recording that we have been trying to get this episode going for almost a year now. And just thing after thing after thing has just put us off. And so it's almost like funny. And, but now we're finally doing this. It's like a surreal thing. Wow, we're actually here.
And I take a lot of the blame for that. I've had a beautiful baby boy since then. We've had actually a freeze challenge in Atlanta, Georgia, of all places. So it's been multiple things, but we're here today.
I think babies are the best excuse for anything. You can have all the excuses you want for babies.
I agree. And my wife had the beautiful baby boy. I should say that. She did all the work.
Totally. Credit where credit's due on that one. Okay, let me give you give our listeners a short bio, and then we'll dive into our episode. Michael Selleck has worked in marketing and innovations for several years. He has worked in food, sleep, and is now back in food and wellness. He loves working on new innovations and sharing them with the world and making people's lives healthier and better. Sweet. Okay, so Michael, why don't you give us a little bit of your background, like how many kids you have, that sort of thing, personal, work-wise, whatever you feel like is important.
Sure, absolutely. Thank you so much again for having me on. So Michael here, we have 3 beautiful children. We just had our youngest about 8 months ago, as I mentioned there. So full house, kind of a lot of sports and activities in school and all of those different things. And that's of course the most fulfilling part of my life. Family is incredibly important to me, so much so that actually about 5 years ago, my parents and my brother and I, who all live in Atlanta, came together and said, how can we work together? We've all had different corporate lives and actually worked in different specialties and disciplines. And so we said, if we can find the right organization or opportunity, we can really put our different heads together and truly make something great for the world. And so it came to be that Sea Agri Solutions, or Sea Agri at the time, was available for purchase in the Georgia area. And it really fit the bill for what we were looking to do. And so our team, we've been working in that business now for 5 years. And not only is my home family incredibly important to me, but it's very important to go to work with people that you care about and people that you can work hand in hand in to make the world a little bit of a better place, one day at a time. As you mentioned, I have a bit of a background in kind of health and wellness. So before Sea Agri, I spent about 10 or 12 years in various different, what they call consumer goods organizations. So I worked for a company called Calphalon, which makes cookware. And so I was actually involved in a lot of innovations there to make cookware that makes making healthier foods easier for you. So allowing you to maybe use less oils or fats or butters or things of that nature. More innovations around proper temperature and making sure that you're keeping nutrients within your food while still properly preparing them. From there, I had a couple of different stops within the mattress industry and spent a lot of time actually working on climate in mattresses. And climate and humidity management and temperature management are really important to the sleep cycles that your body goes through every night. And so we worked with a lot of really cool technologies there to better manage that for you, to better optimize that for you. And after all of those efforts, I actually had a stop at Delta Airlines as well, which is really cool. Worked on the sleep experience for long haul flights. And then now we're with Sea Agri. And I know we're going to talk primarily about Baja today, but I'm also really excited to share more about the C90 part of the business, which deals largely with improving the nutrient density and the quality of our food supply in America.
Cool.
Wow, that's so interesting.
Yeah. Christine, you had some questions you wanted to start off with, right?
Yeah. Why don't you tell us a little bit about the difference between Baja and Sea Agri, and then maybe give us a little background on each company?
Absolutely. So Sea Agri is our what they call parent organization. So we have two different brands that we go to market with under Sea Agri. Sea Agri is kind of like Procter and Gamble or Unilever, and then they have the brands underneath that. So we have C90 Ocean Minerals, which is our regenerative agriculture brand. C90 is actually the genesis of the business. So if you'll allow me for a couple of minutes, C90 was born from the research of a gentleman named Dr. Maynard Murray. And he did a lot of research in the 40s, 50s, and 60s to better understand why it seemed as though American health quality was declining. And it seemed to be doing so in tandem or in parallel with declines in our the nutrient density of our food supply. So at that point, it had been several decades of conventional farming practices. We've gone through things like the Dust Bowl at this point, which are largely driven by synthetic fertilizers, monocropping, other types of activities of that nature. And Dr. Murray put all of that together and said, okay, people's instances of cancer and cellular disease seem to be going up, while at the same time, the amount of calcium in milk and the amount of magnesium in cereal grains is going down. So it seems as though there's got to be some sort of a correlation here between what people are eating and their overall health. At the same time, he did a lot of work in tandem with some really great scientists in Europe to better understand what is actually in the oceans. And maybe it seems silly now, but if you think about it, you're always taught that salt water is what's in the ocean, right? It's just salt water, which really kind of betrays how incredible ocean water is. Salt water or ocean water actually contains way more than just sodium chloride. It has over 90 minerals and trace elements, all in nature's perfect balance. And so Dr. Murray said, the oceans have a lot of minerals. We are lacking in minerals. How do we use these things to resolve one another? And so he started doing research where you can use the minerals in the ocean to fertilize our soils, feed our plants, and feed our animals, and then therefore improve the nutrient density of what we feed human beings. So we have advanced those efforts since our organization was founded in 2003 by Robert Kane. Over the last 5 years, we've greatly expanded how C90 is used across American agriculture. We are on more acres in more states and countries than ever before. And so we are really proud of the work we're doing there to improve the mineralization of our soils and the quality of the food that we're growing. So put a little box around that. That's C90. The other brand, of course, that we're here to talk about today is Baja Gold. So Baja Gold is actually, it's very similar in how we produce it. And we'll talk a little bit about salt production here, but Baja Gold comes from the same Sea of Cortez ocean water as C90. It's incredibly mineral-rich sea salt that is for human consumption. Of course, we have food grade protocols in place for it, but it does start at the same place in the Sea of Cortez. And Baja Gold, while it's its own separate brand, and the reason for that is we actually had a lot of farmers in about 2012 who would come to Robert and say, Robert, I buy your C90 in 50-pound bags. I have them out in the shed. I've these dusty 50-pound bags, right? You can imagine this on a farm. I try to bring them into the kitchen to use them. And my wife is like, what are you doing? Please stop doing this. And so they said, Robert, you have to make like a human version of this stuff. It's the best salt in the world. And I need like a 1-pound bag or a salt grinder I can put on my table. And Robert said, okay, I can do that. And why don't we call it Baja Gold? Because it's from Baja, California, which is in Mexico. And it's the gold standard of all salts. And so those are two different brands. A lot of the same concepts are shared between them. But really, one is for the soil and for animals, and one is for human beings.
That's very cool. Have you guys ever read the book? Oh my gosh, why did it totally just escape my mind? Swiss Family Robinson. Have you ever read this?
Yeah.
Okay, so in this book, this family is shipwrecked on this island, but the mother is so hell-bent on feeding her family good food that, they've gathered whatever from the shipwreck, like pots and whatever that they can, and they're getting animals from the island. And the mother tells one of her kids, to go down to the ocean front where there's some rocks and scrape salt off the rocks so they can flavor their meal. And every time that because Baja is what I keep on my table in a little jar, and every time I pull it out, I'm like, that's what I think of when I'm like putting salt on my food. I'm like, look, I'm like Mom's Swiss Family Robinson, like with my little scraped up little bits of salt.
That's awesome. Yep. Yeah, and we believe in heritage salt creation techniques. That is what we do in a nutshell. And for many, many millennia, that is how humans made salt. So,
what is that? Can you go into the details of heritage? What did you call it again?
Heritage salt creation or salt harvesting. Yes.
Yeah.
So yeah, absolutely. What I'd love to do, actually, if it's okay, I'd like to kind of lay out how we think about the 3 categories of salt that are in the world.
Yeah.
What are they?
Yeah. So we're going to start with what I call the bad stuff.
Okay.
What most people think about it when they hear salt is going to be that navy blue canister, the little girl with the umbrella, right?
Totally.
Or the little, white salt shaker on their favorite diner table. So table salt, elementally, is 99.5% sodium chloride. There's very little nutrient mineral value in it, if any at all. I mean, you're measuring in the parts per trillion. The only thing that sometimes is added to it is a anti-caking agent or synthetic iodine. Mm-hmm. And either one of those are going to be in low quantities and certainly not natural. 99.9% sodium chloride does not exist really anywhere in the world naturally. That's not something that is created or found in the world. So how does it exist? Human beings have actually created ways to create and develop sodium chloride for food grade use. And the reason they did this is a little complicated. We can talk about the history of salt. For many years, of course, salt was used as a very valuable part of human life. The word salt is tied to the word for salary. And so salt, when you make it the way Baja Gold makes it, it's valuable. It takes time and resources. And so over the years, the commoditization of salt has led to what we refer to as table salt now. They wanted it to be free-flowing and abundant in nature, stripped out of any mineral nutrients that may give it like a little gray color or anything like that. They wanted just pure white table salt. So that has very, very little, if any, nutritional value. Table salt is largely used as a preservative, which it has more benefit for, honestly, than mineral content. But as a food seasoning or some sort of a wellness tool, it does not have a significant amount of benefit to human beings, if at all. In fact, in some cultures, like large amounts of ingesting sodium chloride, it's something that's very bad for you. I'll leave it at that. It's not a good thing. You cannot take in a ton of sodium chloride without your systems kind of shutting down. So we always tell people, no matter whose mineral salt you buy, please just promise me you won't buy table salt. Throw out all the table salt and find either Baja Gold or one of our friendly competitors. That's totally fine. So moving on from table salt, you have earth salts or rock salts. earth salts or rock salts are going to be close cousins of unrefined sea salts like Baja Gold. They are just much, much, much older. So what do I mean by that? Earth salts or rock salts are created by, at one time, living, flowing ocean water being captured underground by the movement of tectonic plates within the Earth's crust, and general land mass movement. And so you can imagine what I'm talking about here in terms of time. This is millennia, like significantly long times ago and during extended periods of movement. So when you think about a pink salt or a rock salt, you think about pink Himalayan salt. That is harvested from deep underground in Pakistan. There are also salt deposits found all over the world. A famous one is here in America, with Redmond salt. They have a salt deposit in Redmond, Utah, and they offer a rock salt. So what is different about rock salt? Rock salt, because it has been sitting there dehydrating and precipitating out for many thousands of years, there is some mineral imbalances relative to a fresh ocean salt. So you're still going to have a decrease in sodium chloride. You're going to be about 90%, 90 versus 99% in sodium chloride. So you're doing better there. And you have some of those minerals and trace elements, maybe 5 to 10% in total. But they're not exactly in the same proportions as the ocean. And one of the key things about a pink salt is in the color. That extra iron content is actually the result of the Earth's soil and crust and other minerals that are deep underground kind of leaching into that rock salt. So pink salt has its color because it's significantly higher in iron than the ocean is, or than a gray unrefined sea salt is. So that's not necessarily a bad thing, but it is just a bit of a difference in the balance of the mineral profile. So if the only thing you can have is a pink Himalayan or a Redmond salt, those are good options. Absolutely. They're much better than a table salt. The best option, in our view, is a truly unrefined sea salt. And to show that I'm not biased here, I'll use our friendly competitor, Celtic Sea Salt. That's the most popular, most visible brand out there. So Celtic Sea Salt and Baja Gold Sea Salt are created using heritage salt creation techniques that humans used to do millennia ago. And so what we do is actually create a pond, and the pond could be 6 feet by 6 feet, or it could be like ours, which is about the size of an acre or a football field, where you dig down about 6 feet, 6 to 10 feet or so, and let fresh ocean water flood that pond. And then over the period of 6 to 8 weeks, you simply let the sun dehydrate and precipitate out those mineral and trace element sea salts. And then you go in there and you harvest them and you package them, and that's it. It is the most true representation of the ocean's mineral balance. It also, because of how you are creating it, results in the lowest sodium chloride level. So typically, like a Celtic sea salt will be 80 to 85% sodium chloride. And you can see here how I've walked us down from 99 down to 90 and now into the 80s. And the magic of Baja Gold or C90 is that we live in the 75 to 80% sodium chloride range. And if you think about a volume of a cylinder or the volume of a pie chart or anything, you can only have 100% of something. So if 99% is sodium chloride, you have no room for anything else. Now, if you have 75% sodium chloride, all of a sudden you have up to 20 to 25% of minerals and trace elements that can be beneficial for the human being. Or for whomever you're feeding with the salt. So those are the three different categories. Table salt, avoid at all costs. Earth salt or rock salt, pretty good option. And then unrefined sea salt, like a Celtic salt or like a Baja Gold Sea Salt. It best preserves the mineral and trace element content. It has the naturally lowest sodium chloride levels. And in balance, those two things we believe provide the best. It's just the best salt for any living thing.
That is fascinating. Thank you for breaking that down so well for our listeners. So for the Baja Gold Salt, how I understand that it's basically evaporating. The ocean water is evaporating. Is there a net underneath that catches it, or like how does that work?
Yeah,
and what happens when it rains?
So part of the genius of Dr. Maynard Murray, who discovered this location in the Baja is the unique geological factors of that location. So we're in Baja, Mexico. It's on the peninsula. We source from the Sea of Cortez. I always make a point to say we don't source from the Gulf of Mexico, which I know there's been industry and various accidents in that region. That is not the body of water we source from. It's the Sea of Cortez. It's a very pristine, protected body of water.
You said it's on the West Coast?
It is. It's on it's the Western Gulf, and the Baja Peninsula. It's kind of like Florida for Mexico. It's that like land bridge there that at the very bottom is Cabo. So we are actually up near the northwest corner of the Sea of Cortez, which is the eastern side of the peninsula. If you look at a map, you'll kind of see what I mean there. So the eastern side of the peninsula, the northwest part of the Sea of Cortez. That location was selected by Dr. Murray because you can create salt year round thanks to the very high temperature, very consistently high temperature, and the very low humidity that exists in that region. It's very arid. It's very desert-like. I'm privileged to go there several times a year. And when you get there, first of all, my cell phone stopped working an hour and a half ago. I'm in the middle of nowhere, and it is truly like a lunar landscape. It is. There's some mountains you can see. The Sierra Madre Mountains extend through that region. There's salt flats and just alluvial topsoil everywhere, and that's it. There's no nearby towns. There's nothing really going on, and it's really an incredible landscape to see. And so you don't have, it rains maybe twice a year in that region, and it's not a significant amount of rain. And then the mineral content is so unique because not only is the Sea of Cortez it's a uniquely balanced ocean source, because the Colorado River for many millennia actually ran into the Sea of Cortez. It's since been dammed up, but for millennia it drained fresh water, so you get more of this brackish water balance, and it would pull the minerals from the Rocky Mountains all the way into the Sea of Cortez. And then you also have the San Andreas fault line that runs basically underneath where we are creating our salt. So you have these rare earth elements and just a lot of geothermal activity. So you almost have this mineral soup in that region. It's always hot. It never rains. And you're able to create very consistent salt really year round.
That's really cool.
Yeah, it's fascinating. So,
I know. Now you're making me want to come and see this place. I'm so intrigued. I have actually
had me at your cell phone stops working.
I know, right? I've actually visited a few salt mines in different parts of the world because I like salt so much. So
they're fascinating. You can feel it. You can almost breathe it, and it's very. I feel great when I'm there. So.
Wow. So interesting.
Yeah.
It's like Christine, those salt caves, those like wellness salt caves. You have one of those, Christine, right? Where you can go and like play, your kids can play in like salt, like a sand pit. Weren't you telling me about that?
Supposedly there's one in Dallas. I don't know how like natural that is. I think it's
No. I didn't assume it was natural. I just meant like you're supposed to feel really great when you're in there. I don't know.
Yeah.
It sounds kind of gimmicky to me, but I'm also, I'm very skeptical of these things, like these money grab things. But
and just to answer, because Christine had a question about kind of the surface, right?
Yeah.
So you dig down. So first you're on kind of, it's not quite marshland, but it's very soft soil. And so you really need, we work with a family in Mexico. It's a third generation salter. They've owned this specific land, and they're wonderful people. I love working with them. I've been to a wedding in their family. I mean, we're very, very close, and they have worked on this land for generations. And so creating a new retention pond is almost a decade-long endeavor, because you have very marshy-like, very aerated soil. And so you can't just set up shop and then, work there. What you actually do is you dig the pond, and then you let the salt water flow in. And really, if you have yay much ocean water, you might get 2 or 3 inches of salt out of all of that. There's a lot of precipitation out of water. And so what they have to do is, in order to be able to get out there and harvest the salt, you have to have a period of almost 5 to 6 years worth of salt creation, like harvests without harvesting it, because what you're doing is creating this foundation.
Oh, wow.
And it's a salt foundation. So you have, ultimately, they try to get like a foot, maybe a foot and a half of, it's like concrete, but not concrete, right?
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
then you're able to go out there and not fall through, because otherwise you would just fall right through.
Wow.
Wow.
I'm envisioning some small people walking on it, almost like as if it's ice, and trying not to crack it and fall through, like you said.
Yes.
And do you use, what utensils or tools do you use to harvest salt?
So they go out there with, in some cases, rakes and other equipment for the Baja Gold Salt, and then the C90 salt is a little bit more commercial, but we take care with hand on the Baja Gold Salt. So,
wow,
yeah.
Super cool. Okay, can we transition to talking about the health of salt in a healthy diet?
Mm-hmm.
In other words, for a very long time in our country, salt has been really demonized in the diet, and we've been told to avoid it. And I think at this point we're kind of having a little bit of a resurgence of, salt's okay. But can we talk about like the importance of salt in the diet? And also, I know you touched on iodine being added to table salt.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason, for that was that iodine is an essential nutrient and nobody was getting it. And so they're like, we're just going to add it to table salt because everybody uses table salt. But obviously a natural salt like Baja Gold is not going to have that. So can you touch on, those sorts of those topics where it's, in how it is healthy or it isn't healthy, or, all of these things?
Yeah, of course. I think just to answer the initial question, the most recent question about iodine, so Baja Gold does have a small amount of iodine in it naturally because there is iodine in the ocean. It does not necessarily meet, so in maybe the 40s or 50s, I have to look at it specifically, but the FDA put out guidance to add iodine to salt, like you mentioned, because there was a pandemic of a specific disease, and it escapes me at the moment, but Americans were really afflicted with a health challenge that was the result of an iodine deficiency. And so they added it to basically all salts. And unfortunately, that regulation has never been recalled or anything of that nature. So if you look at the front of our bag, it actually says this salt does not contain iodine,
Right.
because if you don't add whatever it is, 0.5% or 1% to your salt, you have to have that statement on it. Thankfully, that pandemic, that health challenge has abated a great deal in the United States. And so iodized salts are less and less common, not even in the mineral salt category. Most of the Morton salt that you would buy does not have iodine added today. So that's kind of the story there. I do get a lot of questions about, hey, this says this on the bag. Why does it say that? So it's government, you can imagine. So anyway, so salt. Let's talk about salt. So for many, many years, salt has been demonized, as you mentioned, but sodium and the minerals that are attached to sodium, the electrolytes, are the electricity of cells and of all living things. Without salt, we will die. Period. No question about it. All living things without sodium will not thrive and will ultimately perish. So it's really important that you have the proper amount of sodium in your diet and the right type of sodium or salt, which we believe is a mineral sea salt, like a Celtic salt or like a Baja Gold sea salt, because that brings not only the sodium needs for the cells, but also your magnesium, your potassium, your calcium, your sulfur, and all of the trace minerals as well. So there's several things to unpack here. I do think that there was the commoditization and the broad availability of table salt, which then can be used in too much of an abundance. I mean, you can buy 2 pounds of table salt for like 59 cents at your local grocery store. It's silly. I think the bigger challenge, and this could turn into a food podcast, but I think the bigger challenge in America is the amount of processed foods that we eat. And by and large, the way that foods are processed and preserved is through sodium. And so if you go down the frozen food section or anything in kind of like the middle of the grocery store, right, there's so much sodium added to all of these foods that without us knowing it, our sodium intake has ballooned. And that can lead to challenges, especially when it's not mineral sea salt. It's processed table salt is what's in all of that processed food. I'll also say there was, and more of this is coming out in later years, there was a real effort by different industries to demonize fat and salt in favor of sugar. Mm-hmm. And we are now all seeing, after a generation or two of that guidance, of what that does to the human body. I will tell you to eat salt 100 out of 100 times before I tell you to eat sugar, without any doubt. The best thing you could do is to cut out sugars from your life, and high fructose corn syrups and everything kind of associated with that. So I think there's several different things. Like if you think about just in modern parliaments of hey, I heard you shouldn't have salt. Well, okay, but did you hear about sugar and what sugar really does to you? Did you hear that fat, like healthy fats, are critical just the same way that salts are? So I'm getting a little soapboxy, but that's kind of what's happening there. It's just these various different industry agendas and the proliferation of processed foods increasing our sodium intake in a way that we didn't necessarily intend it to. And the lack of broad availability and awareness of alternatives, natural salts.
Yeah, I think one of the worst things that happened from the whole anti-salt agenda was saying that babies didn't need salt. And this idea of not putting any salt in baby food or not giving babies any salt. And, Corey and I love the Weston A. Price Foundation, and we love Lily Nichols. And, both of these, Lily Nichols individually has done tons of research on why babies need salt. So has the Weston A. Price Foundation. And now I think it's coming to light a little bit more that salt is essential for babies and all humans of all ages.
Well, I think the for babies thing still persists in the mainstream. I think in the mainstream, most people are starting to go, okay, well, we do need salt. Our cells need salt to survive. But I'm not sure that it's still, because if you are in any of those mainstream baby-led weaning groups, they're all still saying, don't add salt to your baby's foods, which is just fascinating to me because I'm like, they have cells just like we do, the same cells. Like they literally need salt. This is going to look terrible on myself. I'll tell a story on myself. But in college, I took, my biology class that I had to take for my theater degree. Asked me why that was important. But I had, my biology class, I remember like nothing from this biology class except this one story that my professor told. He was the driest professor ever, but he told this one story about how a woman was calling into, there was like a game on a radio show. And the deal was, whoever could drink the most water would win. And this woman drank herself to death on water because she didn't have enough salt. And she died. And I remember that was, I was in college in the early 2000s. And I remember everybody was still afraid of salt at that point. And that story, obviously, is the only thing that stuck with me out of 2 semesters of biology. But that just made me go, oh my gosh, that was probably one of those awakening moments in my life, where I started to question the narrative. Because, it was just so obvious that salt was necessary through that story. And then, finding out more and more about quality salt and not just table salt. It's like, I'm fascinated by it and how important it has been throughout history and how it used to be used as payment and, trading salt in the Middle Ages in the ancient world was a big part of their economy. And anyway,
you're spot on. Yeah. The word salary comes from the Latin word for salt.
Exactly. So. Yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Corey, when and heaven forbid anyone ever goes to the hospital, what's the first thing they give you when you go to the hospital?
Saline solution,
a saline
right?
solution.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's not water. It's a saline solution.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, well, like Gatorade, and so they used to give us when we were doing sports and stuff, and it's
Pedialyte.
So
Yeah.
Gatorade is fascinating, and there's been a lot of work with Barbara O'Neill and others to create the Nature's Gatorade. Gatorade actually started as Nature's Gatorade. Things have happened since then, but of course, created by researchers at the University of Florida, and they had access to good sea salt down there. And the original Gatorade was water, sea salt, and lemon juice. And so now we're getting back to that, but that idea of just the electrolytes in the ocean provide the support we need to rehydrate and remineralize ourselves. That's been there from the Genesis. Now it's full of other stuff. I don't know. I can't even pronounce half of it, but that's how it started.
Yeah.
So can we touch on that then, on the electrolytes thing? Because I think it's still, you can still go out and buy, electrolyte packets and all of this, but
I feel like they're all,
it's all the rage right now.
Rage, especially in the health and wellness world.
But is it enough to just add a little bit of salt to your water?
So we believe Baja Gold or Celtic salt is a great alternative option to that. There are, as with anything, there are, good, I call them stick packs. Most of them are stick packs, good stick packs. And there are certainly bad stick packs. And the truth is going to be in the ingredients and looking at them. There are ones made by more, common food producers, like if it's Gatorade or some of those. I don't want to just name brands, but if you look at those, and they tend to kind of mimic what's in the pre-liquefied versions of their products. But then you have brands like LMNT, I'll say is pretty well regarded in the health space. And they are very specific about where they get their ingredients from and the types of salt and the types of other ingredients that they're using. Most of those products will be a combination of the different elements. So like they'll have maybe salt from pink Himalayan salt and then like added magnesium caltrate or something like that. And it comes through different forms. So that's how they build what all of them say is like the best hydration formula. I would say maybe God built the best hydration formula and it's just, unrefined sea salt. But certainly there are better ones than there are worse ones out there. So I would just make sure you're reading the labels on those to really understand what's in them.
So what is the mineral profile in Baja Gold?
Absolutely. So we have about 75 to 80% sodium chloride. And then for those major electrolytes, by the way, as a marketer, I have to appreciate the term electrolytes. Whoever came up with that, my goodness. My hat is off to you. That's fantastic. So electrolytes, if you're not familiar, all they are like the big 4 or 5 macro minerals. It's sodium, magnesium, potassium, calcium, and I think sulfur is included in that. Electrolytes are not like some proprietary thing. They're just macro minerals.
Thank you for saying that, breaking that down and the truth of it.
I know.
But I mean, fantastic marketing. I appreciate it. So then we have for the big macro minerals, for magnesium, we are typically averaging around 1 to 1.5%, sometimes as high as 2% magnesium. Potassium, we are, I think, about 0.75% to 1.5%. Calcium is about 0.5% to 1%. Sulfur about the same, about 0.5 to 1%. And then as you look through all of the trace minerals as well, there is more variation in that because the quantities that you're looking at begin to be parts per million. But through over 20 years of testing for the C90 and the Baja Gold, we have delivered superior abundance of minerals versus anything else that we've tested. So, and that goes for the biggest name competitors out there. We have a chart on our website, and we're very transparent with everything we share, all of our macro minerals, and then compared to major competitors as well. So the trace minerals have their own importance, but when you look at hydration specifically, we often have 2, 3, 4, sometimes even 5 to 10 times the amount of magnesium and potassium versus other mineral sea salts, and that's a big differentiator for hydration and for physical fitness and activity versus other salts.
Yeah, I know that, going back to this term of electrolytes, a lot of times people will think like, oh, I can just drink a coconut water. Coconut water has, electrolytes, when in reality, it's actually missing a lot of potassium, and you're not going to be able to hydrate properly if you don't have that certain percentage of potassium. So that's good to hear that Baja has it.
Yeah,
So could
yeah.
you just put Baja in coconut water and then
We've
we're
had
good,
people
right?
do that. Yeah.
Yeah, totally. Okay, should we get controversial here?
Sure.
Yes, let's do
There
it.
has been, I know, right? I feel like last year the internet blew up with salt and everybody was hating on salt. All the different brands, every brand got attacked of like, you can't eat this or you can't have this brand because X, Y, and Z. You can't have this brand because of whatever, and all of them got trashed. And, I kind of think that sometimes influencers pick and choose stuff so that then they can promote their own products or their own solutions, whatever it is. But just to follow that vein, what would you say? Some of the biggest complaints about salt are plastics, heavy metals. I think plastics and heavy metals.
Sure.
What can you say about Baja Gold in relation to plastics and heavy metals?
Sure. So to start with microplastics, microplastics are an unfortunate reality of our modern world. They've been found in virtually all soils, waterways, and there's even studies that they were shown in the air. So they're mobile, which is that's terrible for the human populace. That's awful. What I can say is we take numerous steps to mitigate any effects of plastics or microplastics. So when you look at, and we can share a map of this, but the water that we use from the Sea of Cortez is not like fresh off of the beach. Like we don't go out there and just scoop water up off the beach or anything. The lunar tides actually bring in the ocean water over a period of about 8 to 12 miles of alluvial topsoil. So there's already some natural filtration going on there. We also have very, very strong commercial grade, what I would say low micron, which means low ability to pass through filtration at our site for our ponds. So the actual water, it gets filtered naturally, and then it gets filtered by man-made filtration devices, very heavy duty. We also ensure that we practice good manufacturing principles and good manufacturing practices. So for food grade, what that means is we're using non-plastic items and food grade materials throughout the entirety of the collecting and bagging process where it's possible. And so we ensure that we're not adding anything into the salt. So what I can say on microplastics is that historically we have tested not detected for microplastics. But given the ever evolving nature of things, given that the way to test microplastics is literally using a microscope and looking at every single salt grain. So it's challenging for any manufacturer to guarantee there's no microplastics. But what I can say is we do everything that's possible for us to mitigate against them, and we have our full commitment to continue doing that. And as new technologies come up, we implement them as soon as possible. So that's microplastics. I'm heavy metals. I was ready for this conversation. So I have had this conversation so many times over the last 12 months.
It's like the drama is real right now with that.
Yeah,
like
it really
there was
is.
a couple months there particularly where everybody was talking about it hardcore. And I don't know about you guys, but sometimes I have to just tune that stuff out. Like sometimes it gets to be too much and I'm like, listen, I'm going to use salt regardless.
Yeah.
So just
I'm
log
whatever
off,
it is, what it
touch
is.
grass.
Yeah. But anyway, I do want to hear what your answer is. Like what is...
Yes. So two things before I get into it. So one is I actually am very supportive and complimentary of independent journalism. I want to state that up front because I am not combative in any way with these individuals who publish these results. I think that's great. Honestly, over the last 4 years since COVID, there's been more and more of that. And I think that's good for all of us. The reaction to it and kind of ensuring we understand the results is important as well. But I don't want to denigrate the doing of the work, if that makes sense. The second thing I'll say is if there is any follow-up or confusion from what I say, we have a very long blog post on our website that addresses this in much more detail. So please go to there. If you have any questions, we can link it. The reason we do that is because we really believe in transparency and being open and honest about our products. So when you have an unrefined sea salt that is not processed or dried, heated, baked out, or processed in any way, you have the entirety of the ocean coming through in that sea salt. And ocean water has been shown to contain essentially all of Earth's minerals and trace elements in different balances. Now, those balances and the abundance of them is very important. When we talk about heavy metals and we talk about the presence of heavy metals, we're talking about parts per billion or parts per trillion in some cases. These are extremely, extremely minute. So, again, fully transparent. If you look at the results on our website, we virtually always test below detectable limits for arsenic, cadmium, and mercury. Very rarely we will see a small amount of arsenic. To my knowledge, we've never seen any mercury on Baja Gold. So, and I think the published results would verify that as well from other third parties, I should say. We do significant monitoring of this on either a bi-monthly or monthly basis, testing batches, making sure that we are within where we historically have been. The one that, of course, is talked about more than the other three is lead. I will say all unrefined sea salts, if they are truly an unprocessed sea salt, will have some amount of lead. Our amount of lead is typically below 200 parts per billion, and the most recent tests that we've done have all been around 100 to 150 parts per billion. It is an extremely, extremely small amount of lead. To the point of honesty and transparency, presenting 150 parts per billion as 150 ppb is very different than presenting it as 0.0000015%. And those two numbers are the exact same thing. Mm-hmm. So if there is an agenda to discuss, those two things can be presented very differently. I'll leave that at that. We are fully respectful of anyone who believes that there is no safe amount of heavy metals. I completely respect that. We may not be the salt for you. And if you read the blog post, that's what we say. And I email people that, I talk to people about that. That's totally fine. I completely respect that. And there are other salts out there that are more processed that strip out all of those heavy metals. What is important to add, though, is when you do that, the process to remove all of the other minerals, including heavy metals, removes all of the minerals, period. It is not just the heavy metals. So Morton's table salt, and again, we can talk agendas, when the quote unquote best salt on someone's list is Morton's refined table salt because it doesn't have any heavy metals, is a little, you're missing the full story. I'll leave it at that. It is a 99+% sodium chloride product. It may have anti-caking agents in it. It may have aluminum-based anti-caking agents in it, for all we know. It will not have any heavy metals. It also will not have any magnesium or potassium or calcium or any of those other minerals. So I just wish that entire story was presented and that people could better understand the choices in front of them. Because while you can move to a processed salt that does quote unquote remove 100% of heavy metals, you also remove all of those other benefits. And so is the, what do they say? Is the cure worse than the disease or something like that? There's some saying. Again, if heavy metals are of extreme importance to you and if you have a pre-existing condition, all of those things, I'm a human being. Believe me, I want what is best for you and for your family. In no way do we want to challenge anyone health-wise. We believe Baja Gold is extremely safe. I have an 8-month-old. He's had plenty of Baja Gold. I have an 8 and a 9-year-old. They've had Baja Gold the last 5 years of their lives. So I'll leave it at that. And we publish all of this more so than anyone else that I've seen. If you go to our website, there is raw data from like 6 or 7 reports, and we keep posting them every month of, hey, here's what this one was. So we try to be transparent. We try to tell the full story, and consumers are able to make their own choice from there.
Hey guys, 2025 is the year for you to take control of your family's health. The first step is getting in the kitchen and cleaning out your pantry and fridge. Get rid of all of the processed crap. I can help you with my Real Food, Real Families online course. In just 5 weeks, I will walk you through all of the steps so you can start creating healthy, delicious meals for your family on a regular basis.
Go to nourishthelittles's.com and click on the drop-down menu labeled Courses. Then click on Real Food, Real Families and we're going to put a link in the show notes for you to use. Then use that code MAM10, that's MAM 10 for 10% off this course. It sounds like it's one of those things where there's a lot of gray area, and that I feel like that happens a lot, especially in the health world, where it's either people want to have a black and white answer, and there's very rarely ever for anything a black and white answer.
Absolutely. And as we've grown technologically, we have the benefit of being able to test things more and more minutely. And it's on the responsibility of the manufacturer to follow that advancement and better understand what is truly in your product. I agree with that 100%. But in 5 years, we'll be able to test parts per trillion for certain things. And at some point, it's like, okay, there's probably certain things in certain products, I'm not even talking salt, that we just never knew about before. And that doesn't necessarily make it bad.
Yeah. I think, what were you going to say?
I was just going to say, to your point that you just made, Michael, like, how long has this, if we know that salt has been, a necessary part of human life forever, basically, and we know that heavy metals are present in almost all soil, and so almost everything you're growing in the soil has heavy metals in it, why is it a problem now?
Yeah, I think just because, we have the technology to test more. But actually, what I was going to say is, I think one of the pieces that's left out of the conversation is the idea of cofactors, and that salt has cofactors in it to help the body process and combat the heavy metals in the salt. So to just simply state that the salt is unhealthy because it has X amount, levels of heavy metals in it, I think overlooks the fact that the body has the capability to use the cofactors to its benefit.
Unrefined sea salts have been used for literally millennia. And to my knowledge, I have not seen, certainly nothing with Baja Gold, I have not found a direct link in a use of an unrefined sea salt in a heavy metal poisoning situation. And we've looked. I have not found it. Unrefined sea salts were used in the Roman Empire. We've been doing this a long time. So, but again, we provide the information and people are free to make their own decisions.
Yeah, I think that's I really appreciate that about what you guys are doing, because I do think that's really important, and that's a high integrity move. Mm-hmm. So bravo. Okay. I have a question about fermenting. Which, apologies, it was not on our list of topics, but you mentioned it earlier about how table salt is really good for preserving. And obviously, those of us in the ancestral food space are often preserving our own food, making sauerkraut or kimchi or pickles or whatever. So is Baja Gold a good salt to be using for our home fermenting needs?
It's a great question. I've heard positive things from it. I will admit I am not a big canner or preserver myself, but I have heard that it works. I've heard that sometimes they may vary the quantity versus their original recipe, if that makes sense. Yeah. If it is the sodium specifically, you may need to increase your Baja Gold because, again, on a net volume perspective, you need more Baja Gold to get the same amount of just sodium, if that makes sense. But no, we've heard it works wonders. We've really grown in the sourdough community. And so there's these different niches that, it's a great salt for virtually everything. Yes.
Okay. And then why is Baja Gold almost wet?
Yes.
It's damp.
That's such a good question. I wondered the same thing.
If you've never had Baja Gold salt, most salts that you get, you could kind of pour out and it'll come out in a full stream if you're pouring it out of a jar or something. Baja's a little bit I don't, moist is like the
Yeah,
only.
it's just like it. Yeah, it comes together. I guess maybe I don't know.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's a little naturally clumpy. So
yeah.
that is the moisture is where the mineral magic is. That's a little marketing for you, but
Oh.
it's actually truthful. So the unrefined sea salt harvesting process, we allow it to dry as much as it would naturally dry, but the ambient temperature is only ever getting to like 120, 140 Fahrenheit in that region. So there's only you're
That's
only
very hot.
I
it
know,
is
right?
it is hot. It is hot, but it is not hot enough to fully bake out all of the moisture that's inherently in salt, ocean
Okay.
salt. So you are left with a little bit of moisture. We always recommend, if possible, just season by hand if you're having challenges with like a salt shaker or something like that. But we've also heard that like a Parmesan cheese, like the ones with the bigger hole openings, like you could use that as like a salt shaker for Baja Gold. But Celtic originated this, and kudos to them for helping people kind of better understand the difference. Their salt is also like a wet salt; it's a moist sea salt.
Yeah.
And if your salt can pour, it is indicating to you the sodium level is really high and the mineral levels are lower than they could be. And so when you process table salt, and I'm not an expert in this space, but I know there's the most basic way to process sea salt into table salt is to burn it, like kiln dry it at triple digit like temperatures for a long period of time. And what you do is you burn off all of that extra moisture and all of the minerals go with it, but you're left with a salt that once it cools down, it is very free flowing. And so those the moisture, the mineral content, the sodium content, and the overall, what I would say, healthiness of the salt are all correlated. It's all tied to the same thing. Now you can maybe kiln dry it at a slightly lower temperature and not do that as and not degrade it as greatly. But like a Morton style salt, I mean, that's either gone through a kiln drying process or another reactive process to strip out the moisture and strip out the minerals, so you're able to market it as table salt, which is inherently 99% sodium chloride.
I think for most people who cook on a regular basis, if you're home cooking, for the most part, I think people are usually seasoning. I don't know. For me, anyway, I don't have it in a shaker. I don't have a shaker on any of my spices or herbs either. I would much prefer to measure it, like in the palm of my hand, or
Perfect.
sometimes with a measuring spoon if I'm actually writing a recipe and it needs to be, actually measured. But usually it's just like in the palm of my hand.
We have had, in some cases, if you are looking to really use it in a shaking fashion or something of that nature, like I mentioned, you can use kind of like a middle ground temperature to dry it a little bit more, so it'll go through a shaker or a grinder. I'll have to get back to it. I think it's like 200 degrees for like 20 minutes, like almost
so
like
you just put it on a sheet in your oven, like a cookie sheet.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah. So that is an option if you really are looking to grind it or use it as a like a shaker or something like that. But the best way to preserve that balance of low sodium chloride and high macro minerals is just the way it comes, a little bit moist, and just season it by hand.
Yeah, I keep mine in a little like glass, like a glass mason jar, and the lid is always open, and I just like reach in and season by hand with everything. And then I have a smaller one for the table. Actually, it's a pretty little wooden box, and
yeah, like a salt cellar. Yeah. These are all ancestral things. I mean, that's fantastic. We're on this podcast. That's how we used to do it, y'all. Like, come on.
Yeah, for sure. And actually,
mine is in like a little jar on my table, and it's so cute.
I just made my first batch of sauerkraut about a month ago, and I used Baja. In the past, I confess I have used Redmond. So I did try Baja for fermenting this time around, and I'm going to taste it, I think, in the next day or two. So we'll see how it turns out. And I did not follow a recipe. I literally was just like, we're going to sprinkle a bit and we'll see how this goes. So it's either going to be really salty or maybe not salted enough. But
did you taste the cabbage in between? Like after
no.
you did it? That's how you see. Next time, just taste it as you go. Okay,
thanks for the suggestion, because I definitely didn't think to do that. Okay.
I've used Baja Gold for making, actually, I think almost always. I will say to make sauerkraut, but I will say when it comes to making bread, before I had tried Baja Gold, I was using Redmond's, and I'm sorry, I like Redmond's. It's a great company, but I don't like it for sourdough because it doesn't dissolve.
Okay.
It's like you can't get it to mix in very well. It stays almost too hard. And Baja Gold dissolves really nicely, and it incorporates into the dough really nicely.
That is one of
Yeah.
the benefits of unrefined sea salt. If you're using it for like a hydration tool, it really goes into solution very, very quickly. So if you're putting it in water in the morning or anything like that, or in a baking recipe like that, it dissolves.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Can we transition over for all of our homesteaders or our farmers that are listening? Let's talk a little bit about Sea Agri and the products that can be used on your soil or with your animals.
Absolutely. So I love talking about Sea Agri and C90. It is the genesis of our entire company. And if you haven't read this book, I will put a link in the show notes. It's called Sea Energy Agriculture, SEA, and it's by Dr. Maynard Murray. And he documents, and it's a quick read. It's like 90 minutes. You're in and you're out, and your whole life has changed. It's like, whoa, what just happened?
I love those kinds of books.
So Dr. Maynard Murray, a medical doctor, he was an ear, nose, and throat doctor in the 40s and 50s, and he was really challenged by a decline in patient health. And he seemed to understand that correlated with a decline in our food supply quality, and tried to use the ocean, which he found to be a mineral-rich source of nutrition and vitality, as a tool to remediate our soils, our everything that we grow in our food supply. And so, in a nutshell, what we do is we use the same mineral sea salts, that same unrefined mineral sea salt. Dr. Murray called it a sea solid. We use that to remineralize soils, to improve the nutrient density of pasture grass, of produce, of anything that we grow, and also to feed livestock, equine, everything, every living thing, really. So what can that do for soils? Well, within the soil, you have like the microbiome of the soil, and there's incredible ways that the C90 product actually provides a food source to your bacteria and your fungi that exist within that microbiome to help things grow above the soil. So I am standing on the shoulders of giants here. There are incredible books on this subject. Gabe Brown talks a lot about dirt, the transformation of dirt into soil. Yeah. Soil, Joel Salatin is in this space. Will Harris is actually down in Georgia. This idea of treating soil as the most valuable thing on your farm, because that's where all life begins, is something that we believe deeply, and C90 can help provide nutrition and vitality to that soil. There's also this idea that, when you grow something, it has a significant amount of minerals and trace elements in it. It depends on what you're growing, what that quantity is, but a quote unquote genetically perfect tomato might have 80 plus minerals or trace elements in it. Some are a little bit higher, some are a little bit lower, depending on what you're growing. Over time, if you are just extracting those minerals and trace elements out of your soil, and all you're putting back in is N, P, and K, which if you're in this industry, it's nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium. Sometimes they talk about CalMag, which is calcium and magnesium. Very rarely, do you hear about other minerals. If all you're putting into the soil over 50 years is 5 elements, but every time you harvest, you're harvesting 80 elements, think about what happens over time, right? You're creating an imbalance in the soil, and that's ultimately why you lead to soil health challenges. Your yields may go down if you're in like commercial farming, but more importantly, the quality of what you're growing is going to go down, because plants will struggle. They'll strive to be as great as they can be, but over time, if you're not putting in what you're taking out, it's like a bank account, right? I mean, you can't just keep withdrawing forever if you're not depositing as well. So C90 feeds that microbiome. It works. We send literally truckloads out to 10,000 acre farms for truly commercial agriculture, and we send 25-pound bags out to people with 4x4 raised beds in their garden, and they equally work for everyone.
Yeah. So I was going to ask about that. So what if, most of our listeners are going to be, if they're growing anything, it's going to be on like a small gardening scale. What could they be doing to, sort of amend their soil and keep their gardens healthy? Is it just buy a bag of this stuff from you and put it on every, like how often, or what are we looking at here?
Yeah, absolutely. So we can play a role. Sometimes we say we're the first step in regenerative agriculture. And there's several other soil health practices that they should be practicing as well. But yes, C90 at its most simple can be 1 pound per 100 square feet. You broadcast it over the soil, typically in the spring, and water it in. And then those mineral nutrients are going to feed that soil. You can do it pre-plant. Honestly, if you just hear this podcast in July and your garden is already going, you can still put it in. It's going to be fine. We also offer products that are designed to be liquefied and sprayed, what they call foliar spraying, onto your what the produce that is already growing up. And that can be done, and all of this is on our website, but it's about a teaspoon in a gallon of water, and you just spray it until all of the leaves are covered. You do that every 2 weeks throughout the growing season, and that helps feed them via what's called foliar treatment. But then in the fall, before depending on where you're growing, of course, but before a freeze, you can spread more C90 into the residue and the soil of your garden once you've harvested everything. Or if you're doing overseason cover crops or something like that, it's another great time. So we have people either spring or fall or both. And both are totally fine. But yeah, I mean, you also want to look into, like I said, Gabe Brown has a great book on this. You want to look at multi-species diversity in what you're growing. You want to look at maybe composting and helping to grow really strong bacteria that are local to you. There's this idea called Korean natural farming, where there's been a lot of, and it's an interesting topic to look up. But
we talked about this with Sophia Ng.
Oh, perfect. Okay.
Oh.
So this idea that, like humans, we actually benefit from the bacteria and fungi that are local to our ecosystem. So they make different biological products out there. You can go buy mycorrhizae fungi or bacteria, and you can use them as a soil amendment. But the principles of Korean natural farming, the way I understand it, is that if you can harvest like your hyper local strain of bacteria and fungi, that'll be more beneficial for your plants because it lives in the soil that it's used to. It's like anyone else. If I went and worked in the middle of Europe for a week, I'd be like, this is weird. I know what I'm doing, but I'm not. This isn't my home. I work way better like in my home, right? So that's a bad example, but that's what I'm looking for with bacteria and fungi, is like local, hyper local bacteria. So composting is a great way to do that. Good soil management principles, diversity. The beautiful American grass lawn is really not all that great for the soil underneath it. And so things of that nature, but C90 can play a role in a multi-step process to have a beautiful soil ecosystem, even if it's just a garden in your backyard.
Yeah, I'm going to need a bag of that because my garden was poop last season, and I'm trying all the things to get the soil back to going. Okay, what about on an agricultural level for animals? So, most people that we have some listeners that are homesteading, so they would have animals like maybe goats or cows or pigs or something. But a lot of our listeners we know have backyard chickens. So, what would be how could you use this to help in those sorts of situations?
Absolutely. So if you read the book, before Maynard Murray ultimately got to the idea of feeding animals grain and pasture grass and hay that was grown and fertilized with C90. And he saw incredible benefits in them because he knew that the minerals from the ocean are being then pulled into the plant tissue. And then when they're fed to the animals, they are, those minerals are following the train, right? So then the animals are healthier. He saw declines in rates of cancer and other diseases in animals in some of these like lab trials. But then major herds of cattle were just way healthier when they were eating C90 pasture grass versus non. So from there, we then started actually using C90 as just a pure mineral salt, like as an actual supplement itself. So for your backyard chickens, the simplest thing is just to kind of throw some on the ground and let them kind of scratch and peck at it, and they'll get some of that mineral nutrition. Chickens in general are, you want to just be a little careful because they can overindulge on things pretty quickly, and they just have really small bodies. I just always caution that. But if you have, if you have a horse, if you have small ruminants that you're raising, putting it out free choice is wonderful. Mixing it into their daily rations is wonderful. If you can create something, one of the things we've done a lot of recently is what's called like a brine creation. And so Steve Campbell is another gentleman who's very, very well versed in cattle management, and but the same principles apply to home use. So if you take a little bit of C90 and put it into the water of whatever it is you're raising, they'll enjoy the mineral nutrients through that water creation as well, the brine system there. So I was actually trying to get to, it also works for dogs and cats. And so most people will comment and say, hey, can I feed this to my dog or cat? The best thing to do is, if they have a freshwater bowl, every other bowl of water, put the tiniest amount in there, depending on how big this water bowl is. If you have like a single dog at home, it's just a little bowl. Just put a couple of grains of the C90 or the Baja Gold in there, and they'll enjoy that mineral uptake. And then alternate with a freshwater bowl every other. But if you're on a big property and you have 4, 5, 6 dogs and you have like a big trough of water, put a little bit of C90 in there, and they're really going to benefit from that. It really applies to all living things. We have not had any instance of really any animal that I can think of that hasn't benefited in some way from C90.
Wow, that's so cool. I'm excited. It makes me excited to start planting and put it in my garden, and it never occurred to me to give it to my dogs. So
just a little bit.
Yeah,
you know?
yeah.
So
super cool.
Absolutely. Yeah, and if you're feeding if you have backyard chickens and you're feeding them, the leaves or whatnot from the produce that you're growing, and you're growing that produce with C90, that's more nutrient dense. So if you're throwing them the stems from pepper plants or peppers themselves, then they'll be better off.
Yeah, cool. All right. Did we cover everything? I feel like we've covered everything.
Yeah. Well, we should say, is there any last comment that you want to make, or anything else you want to share about either Baja or Sea Agri?
I really appreciate it. If anyone has any questions at all, we're a small family business. I answer our emails myself. So if you email someone, it's going to be me. And I'm happy to always talk salt. If you have any questions about sodium content, mineral content, any of the more controversial things we talked about, I'm here to answer any of those questions. And I love talking C90 as well. So if you're starting a garden, or if you're starting a homestead, or if you just want to learn more about that subject, please read the book Sea Energy Agriculture. We have it on our website, but I think it's on Amazon and others as well. But that'll really get you into that mindset of how can ocean water really help to solve some of the big challenges we have in conventional commercial agriculture. I don't have anything else. I just am grateful for the opportunity to talk with y'all and share with your listeners.
I'm really glad we finally got to have this conversation.
I know, me too.
It's fascinating. It's totally fascinating. I think, aside from people, kind of having boxes of salt is bad for you, but it also tastes really good, I feel like that's as far as the conversation usually ever goes. And I'm really grateful that we were able to kind of delve into a lot more information and a lot more depth of that.
Absolutely.
So thank you for joining us.
Appreciate the opportunity. And if you ever have any other questions, I'm welcome to come back here. Happy to do it.
Awesome. Yeah. Okay. Can you give our listeners, where they can find, whatever contact stuff you want to give them?
Sure.
Website
and where can they purchase both Baja and Sea Agri?
Exactly.
Absolutely. So Baja Gold Salt Co. is technically our URL. So BajaGoldSaltCo.com. If you just Google Baja Gold, and that's BajaGold, you'll probably get to the right place. We're available on our website. We're on Amazon. We're also on Azure Standard, which we're really proud of that partnership. And we are working on a big distribution opportunity. Hope to share more here in the March timeframe, but we may have some really great retail distribution coming up soon. So excited about that. Stay tuned on our website. On all of the socials, it's Baja Gold Salt Co. So at Baja Gold Salt Co. Facebook, Instagram, TikTok. And then for Sea Agri, so the brand is C90. So it's sea-90.com. There's a significant amount of resources on there. You can buy a small bag for the garden, absolutely on that site, but really that site is a lot more resources for just learning about the topic. So there's some keynote speeches from Dr. Maynard Murray at Acres USA, I think in 1976, which is an awesome blast from the past there. There's some interviews with Robert Kane. All of your application information is available on there. So that's sea-90.com. And again, if you Google C90, I'm sure it'll pop up. C90 is also available on Azure Standard. They have an incredible offer. It is, I believe it's $10 for a 25-pound bag plus the shipping. So we love Azure. They're fantastic. If you're buying your food from them and you're doing like a local drop, add a bag of C90 for $10. And for most people, that will take care of their whole property. So
yeah, I had no idea. I picked up my Azure order this morning. I would have added to my next month order.
I know.
We're also at Tractor Supply as well if you're looking for C90
Oh,
there.
awesome.
Yeah.
Okay.
So yeah, but again, thank you.
And does the MAM 10 code, does that work for Sea Agri and Baja Gold?
That is just Baja Gold.
That's just Baja Gold.
That's just
okay.
Baja Gold.
Thank you
But
for
it's
clarifying.
$10 for a bag, so it's not a big deal.
Yeah, no, totally. But just so that our listeners know, we do have the MAM 10, MAM 10 for 10% off of Baja Gold Salt, and definitely take advantage of that. We are so honored to have this company sponsoring our podcast. So thank you.
Thank you all.
Guys, great news. So Michael kind of teased it in the episode, but now it has come true and we can share it with you. We're really excited to share this with you. Baja Gold Sea Salt is now available in Whole Foods markets. You can go to BajaGoldSaltCo.com/WFM, so Whole Foods Market, WFM, and that'll give you a store locator. They're available in almost every Whole Foods across the country. So you can go to Whole Foods, buy a bag of Baja Gold Sea Salt, and then after you've tried it and you realize how awesome it is, you can go on their website and use the code MAM10, so MAM10, for a discount on their website for buying the salt in bulk, because obviously you're going to love it and you're going to want a lot of it in your house.